Why, good morning, friends. And as you can tell, it's a beautiful start to the day here in New Mexico. And before I get to shooting these gunpowders and testing them, I kind of want to give you all a heads up. As far as I'm concerned, my journey on making homemade black powder is coming to an end. Not just simply because I know everything there is to know about it, is that just for me, in what I value in a black powder propellant, I think I've learned everything that I needed to learn as it pertains to how I shoot and what I expect out of it, such as getting some gunpowder that can go up to over 1900 feet per second with my flintlock. I recognize that those feet per second are a little bit slower in my Great Plains, but that's because of the barrel length. And that's not to say that I'm totally done, but I'm done for a while because I have one more wood I want to get my hand on and try making gunpowder out of that, just simply because I know what the specific gravity is and I know the value of this wood, allegedly, as it pertains to blacksmithing. And I'm going to leave it at that for right now. There is some here in New Mexico, but I got to go get it. And if I can't get it in New Mexico, then I'm going to make a trip to Arizona sometime over the winter, early spring, and acquire some. But my friend William Broken Feather asked me a question here not too terribly long ago in this regard. Out of all the wood that I've used to make gunpowder, which do I prefer? Well, I still prefer juniper. Not because it's the cleanest, not because it's the most powerful, because it's the most plentiful. It's right here on my property. Now, with everything that I've done through the useful tool of a chronograph, I can see when I keep my gunpowders up around 87.5 grains to match that of Swiss by volume, I'm right in that ballpark. And for me, that's more than adequate. I've benched both rifles with all these gunpowders and I see no difference in the grouping. When I shoot offhand, yeah, the grouping sometimes on occasion goes straight to hell. But when I bench it and I use the rest, the grouping is more than adequate for what anybody needs. But I had made a statement in the past about I look for limbs. So let me qualify that just a little bit better right now, okay? What I have here in my hand is a limb that I cut years ago on my property, and it's just been drying ever since. If you look at the end grain, you can see that this limb is pretty much all sapwood. And I've mentioned before, I like the limbs because the grain is tight, but I want to be a little more thorough in that explanation, okay? So I have another piece of limb here that's been on the ground for a little while. You can see that the shaggy bark is still attached and loose, but if you look at the end grain, you can see that it has a very different color core, what I call the heartwood. Okay? As this dries out, that heartwood is going to get a little more dense, I hope. At least that's my theory. But let me show you something else. Like Osage orange, especially here where I live in this general area, people have used juniper limbs, sometimes some of the straight stuff growing, as fencing. You can put the juniper in the ground for decades upon decades upon decades. And I have some on this property right now. Okay, so what I'm about to show you is a fencing post that I just recently dug up because I wanted to verify this for myself and show it to you guys. Okay, here's the fencing post, and as you can see, it's rotting right here. But look at the end grain on that fencing post. virtually untouched. So if I were to use any portion of this to make gunpowder, I would still get rid of the sapwood. You can see the white and get right to the heartwood. Now let me show you something as it pertains to the limb on the tree and what I look for specifically. So this would be the limb that I would come out and cut, just simply because I know it's well dried out. I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but on the top of that limb, hopefully the camera can pick it out and I can zoom in on it better, moss is growing. So I know this limb is more than dried out enough to make gunpowder out of. But that's what I would grab. Now let me show you something else real quick. So you see the tops of those trees right there that are turning yellow? I'm going to pan this way. There in the distance you can see more of those trees starting to turn yellow. Those are cottonwoods. So I don't have to go very far to get cottonwood. It's right here. Now this is not on my property, but it'd be nothing for me to go over there and get some of those limbs of cottonwood. Let me show you something else. So do you see that batch of yellow hued trees that are actually turning to the fall colors? That's all aspens. How do I know? Because I've hiked to the top of there years ago deer hunting, this same time of the year. So if I need to hurry up and get some aspen, there it is. William Broken Feather, this first shot's for you. Osage orange. $17.73. I can say I've done better already. But let me get you some more numbers. Well, here's the first patch. It's pretty clean. But there again, you'd expect it to be clean going down a clean barrel. Let's compare this to patch number 5 if I can find it. I can see it from here, 17.55. So I found patch number 2. Decide for yourself if you think that's clean enough or not. My opinion, it's definitely a little dirtier. Let me get reloaded, get you another number. $17.67. Patch number 3, I'd say it's just about as equally dirty or clean. I mean, it's not, and this patch is still damp like the second one. Honestly, I'd say that's fairly clean for Osage, but it's only patch number 3. $17.73. Thus far, pressures seem to be really consistent. But like I said earlier, I've gotten more feet per second out of that first shot than I have with this. $17.59. Enjoy the filler material. So I'm going to give you guys a visual aid of when I think my gunpowder has milled long enough. Now I've stated in a recent video that I now let it go for about 12 hours a day. During that process I'll tap the bottom of the jar, knock it all loose, let it mill some more. But I also mentioned that this lid is pressure fit. And in fact it's such a pressure fit that I have to use a block of wood and a hammer to dislodge it to get it off. That's how tight that lid is on there. Okay, so you can imagine hitting the lid with a hammer and a block of wood, how much that gunpowder is going to, you know, powder back up. And up until about 30 hours, it does. And what I discovered more recently is letting it go 32, 33 hours, that the chunks that fell off the side of the wall were much bigger. So I let it run a little bit longer. And I want to show you guys now, even at 37.5 hours, I still see this same type of gunpowder at 36 hours when I, take the lid off. And I know the sun is just right to be wrong, but I'm going to move right here, going to stand right here. And if you guys can look on the inside of this jar, how big those chunks are that fell off of the sidewall. And you can still see some of it right there. For me personally, that is telling me that has milled more than long enough, because it's so compact with the milling process that the chunks that fall off the sidewall fall off in big pieces. That gunpowder, in my opinion, is stuck together very well, and that's not using any water or putting anything in this mill jar. That's just milling it for 37.5 hours, and like I said, I get the same thing when I open it up at 36 hours. But like I said, during this entire process of 3 12-hour days, I'll come in and I'll knock it all loose. And when I knock it loose and put it into the strainer right here to sift it through and break up all the powder, the chunks are actually smaller than they are right here, right now. So this is kind of my guideline to tell me that this gunpowder has milled and is more than enough thoroughly mixed. All right, so I'm going to get this into a powder and then start pucking it. To further emphasize what I'm talking about, I just ran it through my screen with the lead media to break up the gunpowder. If you guys can focus in on the bottom of this container, you can see, hopefully you can see, that a lot of that gunpowder is still like in ball shape. So even running it through the screen with lead media to break it up, it's still compacted to itself. And you can see that all the way to the bottom of it. And that's after running it through a screen. So recognizing that there's going to be a predictable outcome, and if you reflect back on this channel, I've taken 80 grains of Swiss by volume, put it in my RCBS balance scale, and it actually weighs 87.5. I've done that multiple times and I come up with 87 even, 87.5. On this particular test, I just backed the scale off to 85 even, and I want you to see what 85 grains of weight of Osage in this powder flask is going to look like. So let me zoom in on it. And as you can see, she's just a hair above 90. And again, with the heavier charcoal that Osage presents, you would expect this to be a little bit heavier, just simply because the charcoal is heavier. And I even demonstrated that in clear glass jars in a previous video. Now let me show you what the flask or the powder measure looks like with the Osage Alder blend. So there's the flask of the Osage Alder blend gunpowder. Now as you can see, it's occupying more volume, and one would predict that just simply because the alder is lighter than the Osage. And remember, if you don't remember, I'll tell you, I went ahead and blended the Osage and alder with a 2-to-1 blend. 2 parts Osage, 1 part alder. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you something through my clear glass jars once again. So quite arguably, it's very hard to discern which gunpowder is which. The gunpowder on the left is the Osage orange, and the gunpowder on the right is the Osage alder blended. I was actually quite surprised to see that these two occupy just about the same amount of space, knowing that the Osage alder, when I blended that charcoal, actually occupied more space in the jar than the Osage by itself. So the question really becomes, at this point, at least for me, is this a testament to the amount of KNO3 versus the amount of charcoal? Because quite honestly, I would have expected the Osage alder blend to occupy a lot more in these jars than it actually does. This is quite interesting for me, but you guys make up your own mind. Now that I got the gun barrel cleaned out, there's that first patch after 5 shots. It's no dirtier or cleaner than anything else that I've shot. Well, here's patch number 5. I would say it's very clean. I did find patch number 4, and once again, these patches are clean. I'm impressed with it thus far. So I'm gonna get loaded up with the Osage alder and get you some numbers with that. $19.15. Well, this patch has shredded to hell. There's just nothing left to it. One of two things. It's burning exceedingly hot, but since I got a couple hundred more feet per second, that means that patch is spinning faster, and since it's a hand-cut patch, I would expect it to shred something like this. French amber flints. $18.33. Well, patch number 2, it's definitely not disintegrated like patch number 1, but it's really no more dirty or cleaner than anything else. $18.93. $18.96. Recovered that one. It's no dirtier than anything else. I'm about to jinx it. Wait till you see the target. I'm going to get one more load down the barrel, and then I have a gunpowder that I have not tried yet. So stay tuned for that. Last shot, 1866. I'm going to go swap out the target, clean the gun barrel, and shoot a gunpowder I haven't tried yet. 1826. Well, that patch shredded beyond recognition. And quite honestly, even though I appear to have gotten a good velocity, I didn't hit the bullseye. I'm only going to do 2 more shots just simply because it's getting hot out here and I kind of want to wrap this up. $18.69. Well, I managed to find that patch. It is pretty much intact, but quite honestly, it's no more dirtier than anything else. Let me get loaded up, take 1 more shot. $18.56. Let me get all this packed up and I'll meet you in my shop. Alrighty. After having reviewed the strings, made sure that all my numbers were called out correctly. They were. How did we do overall? Well, with the Osage by itself, you could tell by that first shot at 1773, it's not the most powerful gunpowder that I've ever made. But bear in mind, my formula is 75, 15, 11. Okay? So all my numbers are based on that formula. And that's a formula that I'm going to stick with just simply because I show in the glass jars that there's more than enough KNO3 to consume the amount of charcoal that you're working with. But the overall average with the Osage was 1765.4 with a spread of 18. That's really good. I have to admit, that's really, really good. But like I said, it's not the most powerful I've ever made. But you might want to see the target. Now, this is specifically for the feller that left a comment underneath a previous video saying he doesn't care how dirty the gunpowder is. How does it group? 5 shots. Is that good enough for you? It's good enough for me. Again, it's not the gun. It's the guy holding it. Now, that's one of the reasons why I elected to hold it with that rest, just simply because I wanted to see what these gunpowders will do when they're in a rest. When they're in a rest. There we go. That's pretty good. That's all 5 shots with the Osage. So by itself, I'm impressed. I really, really am. Really am impressed, and I showed you all of the patches along the way. Now, what about the blended gunpowder, Osage and alder? Well, obviously, that first shot was 1,915 feet per second with a velocity. That's pretty good. But the overall average of 5 shot was 1880.6 with a spread of 82. Now, a lot of guys would probably dispute that, but like I've always said, what makes you more dead, 1,915 feet or 1,833 feet per second? You're just as dead. But either way, the overall average did better than the Osage by itself. Now, what does the targets look like? That's the target. If you take the one that shot a little high and a little low and bring it to the middle, all 5 shots are touching. Now, myself, this isn't the gun. This is my point of aim. I'm shooting at 30 yards with the rest. And if you, like I said, if you were to bring those 2 shots down, all 5 shots are in the same hole. So actually, even with a spread of 82, if a guy was to really hold everything perfectly in place, I'd say that shot a whole lot better, blending that gunpowder. Now for the third gunpowder, the surprise gunpowder. So with that surprise gunpowder, the 3-shot average was 1850 with a spread of 13. Now I fully recognize that that's not enough bullets going downrange to get a really good feel for this particular gunpowder. But even at that, even at that, the first shot and second shot outdid what I did with Osage. So even there, with a clean barrel, I got more feet per second with this surprise gunpowder. So here's the target, those 3 shots. This was the first shot right here, and the last 2 shots are right there. Now I'm not willing to blame this shot on the gunpowder. More than likely, because of what the others shot, I may not have had the gun resting perfectly flat in my rest. But take it for what it's worth, take it with a grain of salt. So you might want to know what that surprise gunpowder was. Well, it's the gunpowder I made with the peanut shells. Yep. So I'm going to be a little snarky here, just simply because when I first made that gunpowder, somebody in the comment section pretty much said, and if you're being snarky, I fully get it, just like I'm being snarky now. So I fully get it. Don't read into this anything that you want to read into it. Take it for what I'm actually doing. I'm being snarky. This person pretty much said, I'm not going to be eating peanuts just to get the shells to make gunpowder. Okay, I get it. I get it. But neither am I wiping my ass with a stick just to make gunpowder out of toilet paper. Take it for what it's worth. I'm just not wiping my ass with a stick just to have gunpowder. And that's why I said a long time ago, guys, when the opportunity presents itself, like right now, when you can get the ingredients that you need to get to make gunpowder, stock up on them. I have. That's why I said, for me, this, I'm just playing around because I probably got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 7 jars of these containers right here, filled to the top with charcoal of various wood species. And I still got more charcoal to make with the Osage orange. And now that I've done what I've done, any other gunpowder I make from here on out with Osage, I'm going to cut it with alder. A 2-to-1 difference. Because what I really got was 115 feet difference between those, the first shot of 1773 with the Osage versus 1915 versus the alder. What would you guys rather have as the first shot going down a clean barrel? 1915 or 1773? That question answers itself. That's why I think in different terms. So thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed what I presented here. If so, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your bestest of buds. And like I said earlier in the video, for me, doing anything, shooting gunpowders and testing gunpowders like that are going to be held off for a while, just simply because I want one more wood. I know what the specific gravity is, and I know what I'm told about it. Wait a tick. Let's do a side-by-side comparison burn of the Osage, once again by itself as the charcoal, and the Osage alder blended. And I did clean up both maple blocks so that everything is clean and they both have an identical background. What's on the block right now is 30 grains of Osage. Now 30 grains of Osage alder blended. Hotter. But let me show you the 2 blocks side by side and you judge for yourselves. Even in the afternoon, you can't beat the smell of black powder burning. Osage alder. I'd say they were comparable. Again, the KN03 is just an absolute minimum. Both of them blended for 37 and a half hours. honestly, looking at them, I would say that maybe the Osage is just a shade cleaner than the blended Osage alder. But when you have a difference in feet per second, as I just showed in this video, what would you rather have? More feet per second or something that's cleaner? Judge for yourselves. So again, thanks for watching, and everybody have a wonderful day. Bye.